You're watching Saturday Anime on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Greetings, this is Reverend Paul, and this is Raw. Today, we are going to be talking about the first episode of the Chainsaw Man anime. Now, the Chainsaw Man anime is based off of the Chainsaw Man manga, which was published in Weekly Shonen Jump. It is written and drawn by Tatsuki Fujimoto. And in the first episode of Chainsaw Man, we meet a character named Denji. And Denji is a dude who is down on his luck. He is really fucked because he has inherited a mountain of debt from his father, and this dude has no choice but to try to pay off his father's debts. Now, he does have one bright spot in his life, and that is his trusted friend Pochita. And Pochita is like a devil chainsaw dog. Now, what I have not mentioned yet is that Denji lives in this world where devils exist. And the devils are kind of like demons that go around terrorizing the lives of the people that live in this universe. So Denji befriends Pochita, who is a chainsaw devil, and Denji and Pochita team up to kill other devils. And this is essentially how Denji is trying to pay off his debts. He is killing devils for these low-level Yakuza dudes who seem to have no respect for him. They make him eat cigarettes, they treat him like shit. These fucking Yakuza dudes really suck. All Denji wants to do is have some bread with some jam on it. He wants to touch some boobs. Denji has a relatable life. He is a character we could all relate to. Now, things get pretty fucked up for Denji one day when the Yakuza guys bring him to this warehouse. And what ends up happening is the Yakuza dudes, they have sold out Denji because they want to get power from this zombie devil. And I think it goes without saying that a zombie devil is going to have zombie minions. And then the zombie minions kill Denji. They fucking stab him, and it is really fucked up. And Denji is dead, he is thrown in the dumpster, and everything seems pretty dark for our hero. But things are not as dark as they seem, because at an earlier time, Denji told Pochita that if something were to happen to him, if Denji were to die, he wants Pochita to take over his body. And that's what Pochita does. Pochita tells Denji, I will give you my heart and you will live again. In exchange, you must show me your dreams. So Denji turns into Chainsaw Man, and Chainsaw Man is pretty fucking cool. He is exactly what you think he is. He is a man with chainsaws. And he uses his chainsaws to fucking kill devils, and he kills all these fucking zombies, and he kills this evil zombie fucking devil, and Denji saves the day, and all is right with the world. I think this first episode of Chainsaw Man is very strong. It is a faithful adaptation of the first chapter of the manga, and I think the team at MAPPA did a really great job in putting this first episode together. And when you look at the credits, they really spared no expense. Chainsaw Man has two directors. The first director is Ryu Nakayama, who was a key animator on Black Clover and Kill la Kill, and the action director for Chainsaw Man is Tatsuya Yoshihara, who was the chief director of Black Clover, and he was the director of Monster Musume. And in addition to that, we have Kazutaka Sugiyama doing character designs, the human character designs, and we have Kiyotaka Oshiyama doing the demon designs. And Kiyotaka Oshiyama did the design for Chainsaw Man in this anime version. And if you're a fan of like ultra-violent shonen anime, Oshiyama should be a familiar name to you. He was also the character designer for Devilman Crybaby. Obviously, the standout sequence of this first episode is going to be the birth of Chainsaw Man. The first appearance of Chainsaw Man in this anime is very epic, and I think it lives up to the version that was in the manga. There are a couple of things that throw me off a little bit. When they first get to the warehouse, I was bothered by how bright it was. In the manga, when the Yakuza dudes bring Denji into the warehouse, all that background is done in black, and it creates this really claustrophobic environment, and I think it really adds to the sense of dread. And in the anime, they lighten it up and it feels a little too bright to me. And the other shot that kind of bothered me was the scene when Pochita merges with Denji. I love that panel where it says show me your dreams in the manga, that shot of Denji's face. It is so ominous and creepy. There's so much in that panel. There is like so much like nihilism and optimism all at the same time. It's a great drawing of Denji's face in the shadow of that trash. And then in the anime, it's a very kind of like normal shot. So those two things bothered me, but I think the action sequence that follows is really great. Seeing Chainsaw Man in animation is fucking awesome. I love the glowing eyes and hearing the revving of the fucking motors of the chainsaw is so fucking cool. I stand by the idea that manga in a lot of ways is superior to anime, but the one thing thing anime does have over manga is the fact you could play with sound design and you could really create a lot of atmosphere with sounds and music. The other scene that really impressed me is the murder of Denji. When Denji is killed in the manga, it's fairly quick. I mean, it's very stylistic. They cut him into pieces and it is very striking and it gets the point across. But in the anime, they really linger on it, where they have the fucking zombie stabbing him and you hear him screaming. The anime basically turned into an Italian giallo film. This sequence in the anime really conveys the agony Denji went through right before he died. And it really gave me a new appreciation for like how fucked up Denji's fate was. I love the opening theme to this anime. It starts off with a really cool bass line. And I know I'm not the first person to say this, but the bass is an underrated instrument in rock. And I'm always down for a bass solo or a solo bass riff. The other thing I love about this Chainsaw Man opening is the shot we get of Power, who is my favorite character. Sure, she's a lot of people's favorite character, but I love this fucking 80s logo, and I love the boob zoom in because that is foreshadowing a lot of important Power moments we'll be seeing in the future of the show. This first episode of Chainsaw Man is also very somber. I think it's worth mentioning that Tatsuki Fujimoto, the original author of Chainsaw Man, a lot of his work is very dark. The previous series he did is Fire Punch, which is an extremely nihilistic series. If Chainsaw Man is Devilman, then I think it's fair to describe Fire Punch as a kind of Violence Jack. It's a very dark series. He also did a one-shot recently called Look Back, which is a very good, very sad manga. And we definitely see this tone present in this first episode of Chainsaw Man. Kikunosuke Toya, the voice actor of Denji, gives a very subdued performance, which reinforces the melancholic tone that permeates this first episode. And then when Denji turns into Chainsaw Man, Toya fucking cuts loose and, you know, he goes crazy and he really gives Chainsaw Man a manic energy. And he does that thing that you want, where he gives Chainsaw Man and Denji two distinct personalities, but they are still personalities within the same person. It's also worth noting Tatsuki Fujimoto, the creator, writer, artist, the creative force behind Chainsaw Man, he is a very socially conscious person. Fire Punch, Chainsaw Man, I would describe them as satires of modern life. His one-shot Look Back is a commentary on the tragedy that happened with Kyoto Animation. He's a very interesting artist whose work is always making a statement. It's always about something. Chainsaw Man is a lot of fun. It's bloody. It's got great action. But beneath the surface, I think it's also saying something, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that is translated into anime. But I thought this episode was great. It was very promising. So check it out if you haven't.
今、運命の物語が始まる。
私はようやく全て思い出すことができました。
風の伝説ザナドゥ PC エンジンから。
NEC
Today, we are going to continue talking about Chainsaw Man. Specifically, we are going to talk about the second episode of the Chainsaw Man anime. Now, in the first episode of Chainsaw Man, we saw Denji turn into Chainsaw Man, and then he killed this entire warehouse full of devils. He killed the head zombie devil, and after Denji is essentially done with his zombie killing spree, he is found by Makima. And Makima is a pretty important public safety devil hunter. And Makima basically looks at Denji and says, you want to know what? You smell like a devil, but you also smell like a human, and you seem like a good dude, so why don't you come and work for me? So Makima takes Denji, and she brings him to like this udon hot dog stand. And while they're at the udon hot dog stand, Makima basically tells Denji, you're going to be my dog, and you're going to do everything I tell you to. And Denji's like, well, that sounds pretty awesome for me. So Denji agrees to work for Makima's public safety devil hunter organization. And Makima tells Denji his condition, merging with the devil, is very rare. In fact, it's a condition so rare they don't have a name for it. But I really do feel like when Makima says the condition is rare, it should be rare in quotation marks, because it's one of those things of like, sure, I guess there aren't a lot of like human devil hybrids, but this is gonna be one of those instances where like there may not be a lot of them, but every single one of them is gonna show up in this city. Katana Man shows up in the opening credits, for God's sakes. How rare can this condition be? Makima brings Denji back to her office office. And when they get to Makima's office, she teams Denji up with this dude named Aki Hayakawa. And Aki Hayakawa is kind of like the polar opposite of Denji. He's a very reserved dude, and Makima tells Hayakawa to show Denji the ropes. And Hayakawa proceeds to show Denji the ropes by kicking the shit out of him and telling him, like, look, you don't have what it takes to be a devil hunter, so you gotta like give up and get the fuck out of here. But what Aki Hayakawa does not understand is that even though Denji does not look like much, he has strength of will. And even though Aki Hayakawa is probably a all-around better fighter than Denji, Denji has a superior fighting technique, and he beats Hayakawa by kicking him repeatedly in the nuts. And I'm sure there are people out there that feel like this is a cheap technique and Denji, the hero of this story, should not be resorting to such a thing. But need I remind you, I believe it was Bruce Lee who said, you gotta do anything you could do to beat a motherfucker in a fight. And if that means beating the shit out of a dude's nuts, that's what you do. These are not my words. These are the words of Bruce Lee. Okay, maybe they're not, but that's not the point. The point is Denji wins this fight. So Denji and Hayakawa go back to Makima, and Makima is very pleased to see that the two of these dudes are getting along so well. And Makima tells Denji that he has to move in with Hayakawa, and Makima also makes it very clear. Denji is not just an employee, he's kind of like the property of the public safety devil hunters. If he disobeys any order, because he's also a devil, Makima has the legal right to kill him. And Denji's like, wow, I thought Makima was cool, but now she seems kind of fucked up. And Hayakawa's like, dude, trust me, she's cool, I owe her my life. So Denji goes to Hayakawa's house and he crashes there. Then the next day, Denji and Hayakawa are sent on a mission where they have to kill a fiend. Now, what a fiend is a devil that has taken over a human corpse. And fiends are easily identified by the fact that they all have weird shaped heads. So Denji and Hayakawa go to this fiend's house, and he's this fucking weird looking dude with pincers sticking out of his mouth. And Hayakawa is like, okay, Denji, let's see this fucking crazy power you have and kill this dude. And Denji's like, yeah, dude, I don't even need to use my power. So he just cuts off this monster's head. And Hayakawa's like, you suck, Denji, because you want to be friends with devils, and I hate devils because devils killed my family and shit. And so I don't trust you and stuff. So Hayakawa bounces out of there, and Denji is alone in the apartment. And in this scene, we learn how good of a dude Denji really is, because not only did he kill this poor man who has turned into this fiend, Denji killed this man in a painless, humane manner. And even though he was a devil, Denji showed him the same dignity as a man. He also proved that he cares about great literature, because another reason why he did not want to kill this dude in his Chainsaw Man form, because when you kill a fiend with a chainsaw, it produces a lot of blood, and Denji did not want to ruin this awesome collection of JAV magazines that this guy had. Denji also realizes that he needs a cause to keep him fighting. Hayakawa's cause is to get revenge for the murder of his parents, and Denji figures the police outside, their cause to fight the devils is probably to protect their family. So Denji asks himself, what cause can he fight for? What is a cause he can believe in, and what is a cause that he would die for? And Denji decides in that room that he will fight for the cause of touching boobs. And it is a cause, no pun intended, that I feel like does not get enough support. If there's one important cause I feel like I can get behind, it's making sure that people have more boob awareness. So Denji and Hayakawa go back to Makima's office, and Makima said, hey, you wanna know what, Denji? Since you did such a good job teaming up with Hayakawa, I'm gonna team you up with this new devil hunter who is a fiend named Power. At first, Denji is kind of bummed out that he has to team up with Power, but then he realizes Power has boobs, and he's like, yeah, Power will totally make a great partner. And so Denji and Power go off into the city in search of fun and meaning, and more adventures to come in the next episode. The first episode of Chainsaw Man started off slow and then built its way to a climactic action set piece. And even though this episode has some great violent high spots, for the most part, this episode is a low-key affair. The action in this episode is kept to a minimum, and this episode is more about developing the characters and establishing their relationships. The first episode of Chainsaw Man was a near-perfect adaptation of the first chapter of the manga, and this second episode of Chainsaw Man adapts chapters 2 to the first couple of pages of chapter 5. However, Chainsaw Man episode 2 does not adapt the source material as faithfully as episode 1. The anime omits an action sequence from the manga, at the beginning of episode 2 when Denji and Makima are at the udon stand. In the manga, there is a sequence where Makima sends Denji on a little quest to kill the Muscle Devil, and it's a very cool action sequence that gives us a little bit more insight into the dynamic between Makima and Denji. In the manga, Denji was faced with this moral quandary where when he came across the Muscle Devil, it seemed at first as if the Muscle Devil befriended a little girl, and Denji was reminded of his relationship with Pochita. Now this turns out to be a whole ruse, and the Muscle Devil is just possessing the girl, so Denji just kills the fuck out of the Muscle Devil. But for a brief second in the manga, Denji was questioning the intentions of Makima, and even though this sequence is missing from the anime still manages to express the idea in the dialogue Denji and Makima have at the udon stand and in the earlier scene in the car. The anime also gives us this shot in Makima's office where she has a painting of the demon Alecchino from Dante's Divine Comedy. Is it weird for somebody to hang that in their office? I don't know. I guess it could be a normal thing. Or not. So even though the anime differs slightly from the manga, it still successfully conveys the dynamic between Makima and Denji, where Denji is not completely sure if he should trust her or not. This episode also establishes the three main trio of characters, Denji, Aki, and Power. Denji is kind of like a horny everyman who is motivated by wanting to touch boobs, and Hayakawa serves as Denji's foil, where he is more straight-laced and by the book. But of course, the coolest of the trio is Power. Power is a fiend. She is all id. She is completely impulsive and just does the first thing that pops in her head. And the more I think of it, Power is the foil to Hayakawa, because if Hayakawa is order, then Power is chaos. Even though this episode is Chainsaw Man-less, it has a great power sequence when Power comes down and smashes the fuck out of this cucumber devil. That is fucking awesome. And somebody pointed out in the comments of the last Chainsaw Man video, even though Power is cute, she's kind of gross. She doesn't bathe. She has really bad bathroom etiquette. She's always sniffing her fingers. She can be pretty disgusting at times, but I feel like that is part of her fiendish charm. Even though the second episode of Chainsaw Man doesn't have as much action as the first episode, I still think it's a very good episode because it does a good job of setting up the characters. It does a good job in setting up this world, which means in episode 3, we can finally move on from this setup phase and we can get into the real meat of Chainsaw Man.
Sci-Fi Channel presents Adventures in Japanese Animation.
You've never seen anything like it. The energy, the imagination, the beauty. Those who know call it anime. You'll call it amazing. The Sci-Fi Channel Global Showcase presents the American television premieres of Robot Carnival, Lensman, and Vampire Hunter D.
Your adventure begins with Robot Carnival. A visual array of pictures, moments.
For what purpose do I exist?
I never programmed you to say those words.
Images of entering into a strange new reality. Robot Carnival. Next.
Where we last left our band of intrepid heroes, Makima teamed Denji up with another devil hunter, a fiend named Power. Power is also the blood devil, which means she has very cool blood-based powers, and Power uses her blood-based powers to kill the fuck out of this creepy sea cucumber devil. And even though Power is proud of this achievement, and it was pretty awesome for us to see this thing's fucking guts, Makima shows up and she lets Power and Denji know public safety devil hunters cannot interfere when a civilian devil hunter is about to apprehend a devil. This seems like a strange rule, but it makes sense when you understand that the story is starting to play its hand a little bit and it's starting to expose some of the themes of this narrative. We're going to start to get the impression that freedom in this world is very hard to come by. So after getting reprimanded by Makima, Denji and Power go and chill out in this, I guess it's a break room? I don't know. They're chilling out, drinking sodas, eating chips. And this is where we find out Power and Denji are going to make great allies because they kind of have common goals. Because you see, before Power started working for the public safety devil hunters, her cat, Meowie, I believe in the Japanese language version, they call her Meowko, which I think sounds better. So Meowko was kidnapped by the giant bat devil. When Denji finds out about this, he doesn't really give a shit because all he gives a shit about is touching boobs. But then he realizes Power has boobs, and Power tells Denji, hey, you wanna know what? If you get my cat back, I'll let you play with my tits. And Denji's like, you wanna know what? That's a pretty fucking awesome deal. Let's go fucking kill this bat devil. So Power brings Denji to the lair of the bat devil. And it turned out Power was just fucking with Denji because she fucking knocks him in the back of the head with one of her blood mallets, and she drags his body to the bat devil, and she tells the bat devil, if I give you this human, will you give me back my cat? And this giant bat, he sucks because he doesn't keep his end of the bargain, and he eats Power's cat, he eats Power, he drinks Denji's blood, and then he flies off to do more carnage and mayhem. So finally, Denji has to take matters into his own hands, and then a fucking chainsaw comes out of his head, and he slices this bat motherfucker into colorful mush. I really love the devil's blood and guts. It looks like gory confetti. Hands down, the third episode of Chainsaw Man is the best episode we've seen so far. I think the action sequence that ends this episode is really cool. Denji's fight with the bat devil, I think so far is the one sequence in the anime that I think blows away the sequence in the manga. Particularly, I think when the bat devil's mouth turns into that mouth cannon and he shoots that fucking giant projectile at Denji and Denji gets fucking thrown back. I like the way that was drawn in the manga, but like the impact of that fucking hit works so well in the anime. I think the bat devil fight has a real visceral quality, and you could really hear the fucking impact of all those hits and just the sting of flesh being sliced apart. And in pure tokusatsu fashion, Chainsaw Man kills the bat devil with these really awesome hero shots, and I love the way blood is just raining all over Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man is the ultra-violent superhero of the 21st century. Even the bat devil itself, I think, works better in the anime. I love the glowing eyes, and the bat devil in the anime really feels like an otherworldly menace. What I think is interesting when you look at these first 3 episodes of Chainsaw Man is that we can see a pattern starting to develop. Denji doesn't really have a lot of freedom to make his own choices. He's always being manipulated into doing something. In the first episode, he was being manipulated into killing the devils for the Yakuza. The second episode of Chainsaw Man was more of a character building exercise, but omitted from the second episode and contained within the manga is a sequence where Makima forces Denji to kill the muscle devil before she'll feed him some udon. And now, in the third episode, Denji is being manipulated into saving Meowko with the promise of being able to touch Power's boobs. And this becomes even more interesting when we look at another scene in this episode. When Makima is in the car with Aki, Makima explains devils pretty much get their powers from fear. And the scarier the object the devil is connected to, the more power that devil has. So in other words, a coffee devil wouldn't be as strong as a car devil by virtue of the fact that more people are scared of dying from a car than from a cup of coffee. Henceforth, a car devil would have more power than a coffee devil. Now, when you start to put all this stuff together, you start to understand Chainsaw Man has the power to kill devils, and devils are powered by fear. So in other words, Chainsaw Man has the power to kill fear. And here, for the first time in the Chainsaw Man anime, we have hit upon one of the main ideas in Chainsaw Man, which is having the power to fight fear. So the fact that this whole episode revolves around Denji trying to touch boobs is a very interesting metaphor. Because when you look at Denji, he's a pretty average looking anime character dude. Denji looks like a guy who, if he put his mind to it, could probably touch as many boobs as he would like. But like a lot of people, Denji gets up in his own head. He's too afraid to go out in the world and try to touch boobs. In the first episode, the idea of touching boobs seemed like an impossibility to Denji. He convinced himself it would probably never happen. But when he turns into Chainsaw Man, suddenly that fear goes away and the power to touch boobs is within his grasp. Chainsaw Man is making the statement about taking power over your fear and to free yourself from the forces that are manipulating you. Pochita told Denji that he would give him the power to make his dreams come true. And Pochita has done that by giving him the ability to kill fear. And if you didn't even think it was possible, the boob metaphor in this plot goes even deeper. Because the entire plot of this story is kicked off when Power tells Denji he could touch her boobs. And that motivates Denji to help Power, that convinces Denji to follow Power to the Bat Devil. But another really interesting thing I think worth pointing out, when the Bat Devil has seemingly devoured Power and Miyako, Denji doesn't summon the power of Chainsaw Man by thinking about Power's boobs. Denji summons the power of Chainsaw Man by thinking about Power and her love for her cat. And Denji thinks about a time when he lost Pochita and he was so scared he would never find him again, but then was grateful when he finally did. Then Denji starts to think about Power and when she lost her cat and she didn't get her back. How devastated she must be. That is what turns Denji into Chainsaw Man. Denji cares about Power, but he's afraid to admit it to himself. He tells himself he only cares about Power's boobs, but that's not true. He cares about her. He's just too afraid to admit it to himself. And the idea of having your freedom restricted is not just applied to Denji. We could also see it with Power, given the fact that she's not allowed to come and go as she pleases. She needs to get permission from the public safety devil hunters before she goes anywhere. This third episode of Chainsaw Man also has my favorite ending sequence, which features a song by Maximum the Hormone, a track called 200 million centimeter long blades. Just like the opening sequence, this track starts with a very cool bass line, and I really love the psychedelic animation, and the music really complements the trippiness of the art style. As I said before, I think this is the best Chainsaw Man episode so far. I think if you're on the fence about Chainsaw Man, I think this is the episode that would make you a fan. And if it doesn't, then I guess this is not a show for you. The first episode of the Chainsaw Man dub also came out this week. I watched that, also very good. I thought it was a solid dub. Altogether, I've been very satisfied with the Chainsaw Man anime. Everything I've seen so far I think has been really cool. And so far for me, the Chainsaw Man anime has been a great companion piece to the manga, and it's definitely lived up to my expectations. But I'd be interested to hear if there are people out there who disagree. I'm always interested in hearing a dissenting opinion. And so going forward, I'm looking forward to seeing how the story develops and the other cool deep meanings and metaphors Chainsaw Man could put in a story about boobs. In the last episode, we saw an epic fight between Denji and the Bat Devil, and he sliced the Bat Devil to pieces in order to save Power and her trusted cat Miyako. So Chainsaw Man episode 4 picks up with Denji saving Power, and just as he's about to cop a feel of those awesome tits, he is attacked by the Leech Devil. And the Leech Devil is like a creepy looking weird leech chick, and it turns out she was actually like the girlfriend of the Bat Devil. And now that I say that, I can't help but conjure up the image of what it looks like of these two devils fucking. So I guess the Bat Devil was sucking the blood out of the Leech Devil's banana boobs. I don't know, I'm thinking about this way too much, but I digress. So Denji tries to fight the Leech Devil, but unfortunately he is out of blood. He is unable to completely transform into Chainsaw Man. But Denji still puts up pretty good of a fight, but the Leech Devil does kick his ass. But the day is not lost because Denji is saved by the Fox Devil, who has a contract with Aki. In exchange for her eating away a part of Aki's body, the Fox Devil will do Aki's bidding. So they take Denji's body to the hospital and he heals up in the hospital, and it seems like Denji and Aki have come to an understanding, and maybe this means they're going to start to get along a little bit better. And then when Aki and Denji get back to the house, Aki chills out, he makes himself a cup of coffee, he has a couple of cigarettes, he starts reading his paper. Then he gets a call from Makima, and it turns out that Power is going to move in with Denji and Aki. And living with Power is quite a challenge because Power is pretty difficult. She's pretty gross, she doesn't clean up after herself after using the bathroom, she refuses to eat her vegetables. Power is an all-around pretty difficult roommate. Chainsaw Man episode 4 is kind of the inverse of episode 3. Where episode 3 started off slow and builds to a climactic action sequence, episode 4 begins with a big action set piece and then winds down to more slice of lifey stuff. I do feel like there are two big things worth talking about in this episode, and I'm not just talking about Power's boobs. I mean, I am talking about her boobs, but I'm also talking about other stuff. Just like the last episode, we are starting to see the world of Chainsaw Man has a lot of nuance to it. Even though the episode presents it as a bit of an aside, the fact that the Bat Devil and the Leech Devil were in a relationship is interesting. It means that the devils have more dimension to them than just being these evil creatures. This is an idea we also see expressed with Power. Even though she's a fiend and she's obnoxious and she's quick to violence, in this episode we see that Power cares about Denji. When Denji is being attacked by the Leech Devil, Power tells Denji to take Nyako and run away. Even though Power is a murderous psycho who totally had plans to kill Denji, she is able to grow as a person. Slowly the anime is beginning to tell us that the line between good and evil in this world is not clearly defined. Even though Aki covers for Power and he frees her from her restraints, he still insists that devils are their enemies. Aki has a very black and white way of looking at the world. As these episodes are going on, it's becoming increasingly clear that despite Aki's black and white thinking, he exists in a world of gray. I think Aki's relationship with the Fox Devil also gives us a little bit more insight into the world of Chainsaw Man, because Aki can't use the Fox Devil without losing a piece of himself. So everything in the world of Chainsaw Man comes at a price. Whether we're talking about using a giant fox as a super move or squeezing a boob, nothing will come to you for free. This episode is also the beginning of the awesome boob payoff. Now, in the last episode, Power told Denji that if he saved Nyako, she would let him play with her boobs, and this episode gives us the payoff, where Power corners Denji in the restroom and tells him, now is the time you could touch my boobs. And going back to what I said in the last video, this idea of Denji's quest for touching boobs being this metaphor for fear. It's interesting that when Denji is finally given the opportunity to touch boobs, he freezes up and he gets scared. This should make it even clearer that Denji's problem is not that he had no boobs to touch. The reason he wasn't touching boobs is because he was too afraid to try in the first place. I also feel like you could interpret Denji's reaction to finally being able to touch boobs as a kind of fear of success. Do you ever have that moment where like you wanted something really badly and then you worked really hard to try to get it, and then you had this realization that you were about to get the thing that you wanted, and then suddenly you got really freaked out? Sometimes you spend so much time dreaming about something that you never actually really think about what it actually means to get it, because you've become more comfortable with chasing the goal than actually achieving it. Denji started to show his first bit of confidence outside of his Chainsaw Man persona when he was fighting the Leech Devil when his body couldn't complete its transformation. Even though Denji wasn't able to summon all of the strength of Chainsaw Man, Denji was able to go the distance with the Leech Devil just by sheer will. Denji is beginning to push back against his fear. And I think this episode also lends credence to the idea I brought up in the previous video, where despite what Denji says, he does care about Power. Aki points out Power tried to fucking kill Denji, and Denji still thinks she seems pretty cool. Even though Denji has been beaten down by a cynical world and he himself has become cynical, he still sees the good in people. The Chainsaw Man versus Leech Devil fight is not as good as the Bat Devil fight from the previous episode, but I don't see that being a problem because this episode serves more as a continuation of the ideas and themes of the previous episode. So even though the Leech Devil fight sequence isn't as badass as the Bat fight sequence, I think the fight works well because it serves its function within the story, and it's also entertaining. It shows that even in a partial transformation, Chainsaw Man is pretty fucking lethal. This episode of Chainsaw Man also introduces the rest of Division 4, Himeno, Arai, and Higashiyama. So that's pretty cool. So far, episode 3 still holds the title of my favorite ending sequence, but I think the ending sequence of this episode is fun. It's a cute ending sequence that gives us a lot of characterization of Power, and it's a fun, entertaining visual way of showing off different aspects of Power's personality. Now, everybody, including myself, loves Power, but as we see in this episode, living with Power would be a real fucking pain in the ass. But I mean, it's understandable because Power is a person who used to live naked in the forest. She would kill animals and eat them raw. So Power is not used to like modern sensibilities like bathing. But that is not a problem for me because I think Power is awesome. She's got no problem showing off her boobs. And you want to know what? Maybe fiends don't need to bathe. Maybe fiends don't have sweat glands and don't get dirty. I don't know. This episode of Chainsaw Man also has what I think is the funniest scene in the series so far, where Aki has his arm over Denji and he's trying to help him walk, and then Denji's all wall-eyed and he's like, like Denji sounds like Arnold in Total Recall when he's on the surface of Mars and his fucking eyes are bugging out of his head. I thought that was fucking hilarious. Overall, I wouldn't say Chainsaw Man episode 4 is as strong as episode 3, but I do think episode 4 is a good episode in its own right, and it really serves more as a continuation of episode 3, both in terms of the narrative and reinforcing the themes. Episodes 3 and 4 could be looked at as one long episode. I bet you didn't think we were going to spend this much time talking about boobs. It's probably starting to make sense why, out of all of the animes, this is the one I chose to do episode reviews of. And it really should be a lesson to all the writers out there. Just because your story is about boobs doesn't mean it doesn't have an important and meaningful message. And so next week, we're going to break down the epic honking of the Hooters, and there's going to be a lot more boob symbolism to talk about, so don't miss that, and stick around.
Imagine you wake up in Jurassic Park and you're a raptor. You have sharp teeth and 7-inch claws, and since you've been extinct for 65 million years, you'd be in a really bad mood.
System engaged. Soul sector.
Take out!
ネジキューブ
ユーザープロファイルシステム搭載で君だけの戦いが実現する空前のハイクオリティ&パワードリームキャスト版 Dead or Alive 2お前の負けだ
コンビニで
Chris Conley with an MTV News Brief. Smashing Pumpkins, who plan to return to the road August 12th in Vancouver with replacements for fired drummer Jimmy Chamberlain and their late tour keyboardist Jonathan Melvoin, have rescheduled their 2 New York City shows, which were to have been played the weekend of Melvoin's fatal heroin overdose. Tickets for the July 12th Madison Square Garden show will now be honored on September 17th. The July 13th show will be made up the next night. Meanwhile, the New York City Medical Examiner's Office has announced that Melvoin did in fact die from the combined effects of heroin and alcohol. That's the news for now. More on this and other stories throughout the day, right here on MTV.
So in this episode, Denji finally gets to touch Power's boobs. So Denji gears up and he grabs a hold of those honkers and he fucking honks them 3 times, and Power thinks it's pretty awesome, and Denji seems a bit bummed out. So Denji goes to Makima and he lets her know he's kind of bummed out because he achieved his goal and it wasn't exactly what he thought it would be. And Makima's like, hey, don't worry, you could touch my boobs too. So Makima lets Denji feel her up, and then Makima tells Denji about the Gun Devil. And the Gun Devil is the most powerful devil in this world. The last time the Gun Devil appeared, the Gun Devil single-handedly killed 1.2 million people. And the goal of Division 4 is to find all the pieces of the Gun Devil and to finish him off once and for all. And Makima tells Denji, hey, if you kill the Gun Devil, that means we could have sex. And Denji's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna go kill this Gun Devil. Later on, Denji and Power team up with Aki and the rest of Division 4, Himeno, Adai, and Kobeni, and the team goes to a hotel to track down another piece of the Gun Devil. And since Denji seems a little distracted, Himeno tries to get Denji to focus on killing this mysterious hotel devil by telling him that if he kills the devil, she will give him a French kiss. And Denji's like, well, that's totally an awesome deal. I'm gonna go kill this fucking devil. And then Adai is like, no, you ain't killing this fucking devil. And Denji's like, hey, leave me the fuck alone. And Power's there just being fucking cool as usual. Needless to say, hijinks ensue. So in Chainsaw Man episode 5, we finally get to see Denji realize his dream of touching boobs. And despite dreaming of touching boobs and wanting to touch boobs more than anything, when Denji finally gets to touch boobs, he's kind of disappointed. And then he starts to have this existential crisis, and he starts to ask himself, well, if touching boobs wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be, maybe everything else that I want, when I finally get it, I'll realize those things aren't as great either. Denji thought touching boobs would magically solve his problems. And what I also think is interesting is that later on in this episode, Denji gets to touch Makima's boobs, and he gets even more freaked out than he did with Power. And Denji draws the conclusion that even though touching boobs may be disappointing, it won't be disappointing if he kisses somebody he likes. Even though he just touched the boobs of somebody he likes, and that didn't seem to make him feel any better. Denji is doing this thing that I feel like a lot of people do. They feel like a loser, and they feel like, well, if I do these certain things, like touch a boob or get super chainsaw powers, I'm not going to feel like a loser. And just as I pointed out in my previous videos, Denji is developing a pattern of behavior. Once again, Denji is trying to use sex as a form of validation. Even though he's already copped a feel, and he still feels like the same schlubby loser he's always felt like. Hey, even though boobs didn't fix my problems, maybe making out will. Now, to be fair to Denji, he was actually pretty close to realizing this himself. But it was Makima that told him that, well, you're not wrong for fixating on something and wanting that thing to make you happy. You just weren't doing it right. Denji is just caught in this same cycle of failure, which is fitting because at the end of this episode, the entire team gets caught in a loop in the hotel. We are starting to see the narrative and the themes in Chainsaw Man intertwine with each other. It's also worth mentioning that when Denji and the other members of Division 4 are in the hotel, they don't get caught in a loop until they reach the 8th floor. And the reason I point that out is because in a lot of cultures, the number 8, because it's basically made of a series of connecting loops, has often been considered a symbol of infinity. And this is an idea that will be expanded upon in the next episode. I also think it's worth talking about how cool the animation in this series has been so far. Obviously, the fight sequences have been great. They've really delivered on a lot of carnage and gore. But I think the best thing I could say about the animation in this show is that there are times where I completely forget it's CG and I just feel like I'm watching any 2D anime. I think that's a testament to the quality of the animation, and I think it's also a testament to the storytelling, the fact that the story of Chainsaw Man really draws you into its world. I think the flashback sequence of the two kids is a really great example of how even the subtle animation in the series is really great. The dynamic between the two brothers playing in the snow, for me, was very reminiscent of Grave of the Fireflies. And it's a very simple scene, but it is very effective in establishing the relationship of these two siblings in very simple ways. Now, I'm not done psychoanalyzing Denji, because I think it seems pretty clear that Denji doesn't really know what the fuck he wants or how the fuck to get it. He's a really confused dude. And he talks about how disappointing it was to touch Power's boobs, but if it was really that bad, I would reckon he would not have cashed in all 3 fucking squeezes. As I mentioned in my last couple of videos, Denji really seems to be in denial with his feelings about Power. How can you not like touching Power's boobs? Power even stuffs her bra to make sure there is added softness for the squeeze. That's a thoughtful woman. Once again, there's a lot of important subtext in these boob sequences. I'm not just being a weirdo for talking about them. I mean, I'm certainly a weirdo, but it's not, just because I talk about boobs. I think the two reactions Denji has to touching boobs are interesting. He's kind of subdued when he's touching Power's boobs, and then he completely freaks out when he touches Makima's boobs. And then Makima tells him that, well, even though you were disappointed at your previous attempts at being intimate, if you're intimate with somebody you have feelings for, that will make it better. Now, that may be true, but it also makes it scarier. And that is why Denji completely overreacts when he touches Makima's boobs, because he is completely fixated on Makima. And when you like somebody, you are much more invested in the interactions you have with that person. You put a lot of pressure on yourself to make sure those interactions go well. And then if they don't, you end up beating yourself up about it. That is why it is always scarier to touch the boobs of somebody you like versus somebody you don't like. Which begs the question, if this is the way Denji acts after touching Makima's boobs, boobs, how will he act when faced with the reality of actually being able to have sex with Makima? I'm pretty sure my man here would have a complete meltdown. Makima really has this Agito Makishima quality about her. She's this kind of person who, like, if I was in a room with somebody and she was in there talking to us and then left, I would turn to the person I was talking to and go, what the fuck is up with her? Like, is it me or does she come off as kind of weird? Or maybe it's just the fact that she's like a mysterious government official? All I'm saying is that if Makima turns out to be Guyver 3, I wouldn't be surprised.
Vampire Hunter D. It's a dramatic form of animation. Subject and material may be graphic and provocative at times. It's a stark place and a desperate time. A brave young girl and a hunter for hire.
Now you die.
It's a fierce battle for her life,
Don't leave me!
his name, and a world ravaged by mutants and demons. Vampire Hunter D. Next.
こちらゲームポリス光信号とロボットの作動をキャッチ。
ファミリーコンピュータとロボットが合体したあの新しいゲームか？
はい。あ、今ブロックからジャイロへソフトの切り替えが行われたようです。楽しみを独り占めするのは禁止されている。
ファミリーコンピュータロボットブロックとジャイロ。
Now, in the 6th episode of Chainsaw Man, Denji, Aki, Power, and the rest of Division 4 find themselves trapped on the 8th floor in this hotel. If they go up the stairs, they're still on the 8th floor. If they go down the stairs, they're still on the 8th floor. Even if they leave the hallway, go into one of the rooms, and climb out the window, they will still just end up back in the hotel. So since everybody is pretty much trapped, they all kind of deal with it in their own way. Aki tries to figure out a solution to the problem. Arai starts off helping Aki, then he ends up having a panic attack. Kobeni is just freaked out all the time, and Denji passes out while Power plans to win the Nobel Prize. So it turns out that the team has been lured and trapped in this hotel by the Eternity Devil. And the Eternity Devil tells them if they kill Denji, he will let them go. But Himeno and Aki are like, no, you can't kill Denji because that's what the devils want. Plus, we are devil hunters. We do not kill people. But unfortunately, Kobeni succumbs to the pressure and tries to kill Denji. But Denji is heroically saved by Aki. And it is at this moment Denji decides to step up. And he realizes that the only way he is going to get out of there and save his friends is by facing the Eternity Devil head on. Now, the past couple of videos I've been talking mainly about Power and Denji, but I think it's about time we talk about Aki. These past couple of episodes have been giving us more detail about Aki's backstory. We learned that as a boy, he lost his family to the Gun Devil, and we learned that it was Himeno that taught Aki how to be a devil hunter. In fact, I think you could say that Aki pretty much based a lot of his personality off of Himeno. Like Himeno, Aki has a smoking habit, and he has a contract with the demon that requires giving up a part of his body. He also has classic hero qualities like selflessness and loyalty. In this episode, when Kobeni tries to kill Denji, Aki jumps in the way. Now, Aki says he's doing this because he needs Denji to kill the Gun Devil, which is true, but I also think Aki is a dude who's going to do what he can to help everyone. And in the flashback sequence, we see what a loyal friend Aki is to Himeno. Because after Himeno was confronted and attacked by a family member of her former partner that blamed Himeno for the partner's death, Aki runs up and puts gum on this person's clothes, which was a nice gesture Aki did for his friend. But I do have to say, like, Aki doesn't know the circumstances of Himeno's partner's death. For all he knows, Himeno's partner could have been allergic to Pez, and then for his birthday, Himeno made him drink 100 Pez-flavored ales. I don't know, maybe his death was 100% Himeno's fault, but that does not matter to Aki, because Aki will stand by his friend. I think there's definitely an argument to be made that Aki is more badass than Denji. Because Aki doesn't have awesome Chainsaw Man powers, but he is still determined to get revenge on the Gun Devil. He is a man who will do whatever it it takes to avenge his family. Now, I mentioned before that Chainsaw Man is pretty much a story about fear, and Denji and Chainsaw Man is kind of this metaphor for like taking power over fear. And in contrast, Aki could be looked at as somebody who's become consumed by fear and has chose to deal with that fear with this quest for revenge. And it's interesting when you think about the fact that all of the contracts Aki has with the other devils are literally ripping away pieces of him. Every time he uses Kan, he loses a part of his body. Anytime he uses the sword, he will lose time off of his life. It's almost as if the story is trying to tell us that Aki's quest for revenge is tearing him to pieces. And if he keeps going down this path, eventually there will be nothing of him left. And you can't help but wonder if maybe Aki knows this himself, and that's why he is a badass, because even though he knows that the odds are against him, he will do whatever it takes to kill the gun devil. He is still pushing forward. Now, I've also mentioned before that Chainsaw Man reminds me a lot of Devilman, and similar to Chainsaw Man, Devilman is also a story that has fear as a central theme. And the reason I bring up Devilman is because this fight sequence that is about to take place with the Eternity Devil kind of reminds me of the fight sequence between Devilman and the demon Gene-Men. Like the Eternity Devil, Gene-Men is made up of a bunch of faces, but instead of being a giant blob of fleshy faces, Gene-Men is a demon turtle that has people's faces on his shell. And the faces of the people on Gene-Men's shell are actually the faces of the people he kills. Every time he fucking kills a person, their fucking body is absorbed and their face appears on the back of his shell. And every time Devilman tries to fight Gene-Men, he turns around and hides behind the screaming faces of his victims. And those screaming faces are what forces Devilman to retreat. Now, the way Devilman eventually is able to kill Gene-Men is by realizing that he has to ignore the screaming faces and just fucking kill Gene-Men, because as soon as this fucking demon is dead, everybody will be out of their misery. Gene-Men's greatest weapon was doubt. He hid behind the faces of his victims to make Devilman believe if he were to attack Gene-Men, he would cause more suffering to the faces. But all this essentially was Gene-Men gaslighting Devilman into thinking there was no way he could kill him. Now, I know that seems like a tangent, but the reason I bring this up is because I feel like the Eternity Devil is similar to Gene-Men because, like Gene-Men, doubt is his greatest weapon. And the way to ultimately beat him will be to confront that doubt. Now, you are probably wondering what Kobeni is even doing on this team, because from the moment the team gets into this hotel, Kobeni is basically Principal McVicker from Beavis and Butthead. She is a fucking complete bundle of nerves, and it seems pretty clear to everybody she is unqualified. But what I think this is showing us is how desperate the public safety devil hunters are. They'll basically take everybody, even people who have no business being fucking devil hunters. I do have to say, I am kind of disappointed in Denji, because when given the chance to do anything he wanted with Eternity, he chose to sleep in the bed. I mean, look, I enjoy sleeping in a comfortable hotel bed as much as the next person, but how could you want to do that when your other choice is wrestling with Power? Plus, I want to hear more of Power's great policy ideas for when she becomes Prime Minister. I think her 100% sales tax idea is a great way to stimulate the economy. I also feel like when Power is wrestling people, she probably uses the Taz mission as a finisher. I don't know why, I just get the impression that she does. I also think the flashback sequences of Himeno and Aki, both in this episode and the previous episode, did an effective job in setting up their relationship. Himeno met Aki after losing a partner, and Aki met Himeno after losing his family. I feel like the flashbacks have that same quality the flashbacks in Cowboy Bebop has, where they don't necessarily give you a lot of information, but they give you enough information for you to kind of fill in the gaps yourself. And I love the scene when Himeno sees Aki bleeding and her whole cool demeanor breaks and she has this moment of realization that she might be losing another partner. And you see how vulnerable she really is. I think moments like that bring a lot of humanity to the characters. And I think you could definitely say that even though Chainsaw Man has some pretty ridiculous characters with some ridiculous motivations, the characters are not one-dimensional. Even Power, who is completely over the top, exhibits a complete range of human emotions. So we are 6 episodes in and we are halfway through the first season of Chainsaw Man. And so far, I think it's been pretty cool. I think it's lived up to the hype so far. But I would be interested in hearing telling other people if they are disappointed. If there are any negative opinions out there, I'd love to hear them. So far, I think the animation has been great, and despite a couple of minor changes, this is a very faithful adaptation of the manga. This week's episode was a little bit of a slow burn, but next week, Chainsaw Man will be back, and I am looking forward to finally seeing the face-off between Chainsaw Man and the Eternity Devil.
Liquid Television premieres Tuesday, September 22nd at 10 on MTV.
彼女に襲いかかる最悪のシナリオ、破壊と脱出2つの試練、ゲームボーイアドバンス、メトロイドゼロミッション。
Now, where we last left off, Denji and the rest of Division 4 were trapped by the Eternity Devil. And the Eternity Devil is like this giant fleshy mass that just gets bigger every time you fucking stab this thing. And the Eternity Devil taunts Denji and tells him the only way Denji can kill him is if Denji finds his heart. And Denji will never find his heart because the Eternity Devil will just keep regenerating and growing. And Denji turns into Chainsaw Man and he's like, well, that's fucking fine by me because I'm just gonna fucking keep slicing you open and drinking your blood, and I will become a fucking perpetual motion machine of violence. And at this point, it seems pretty clear that Denji has a good chance of stealing away that Nobel Prize from Power. So after 3 days of fucking hacking up this giant fleshy fuck, the Eternity Devil finally gives Denji his heart, and he begs Denji to kill him to end the suffering. And Denji kills this evil fuck and saves the day and the rest of Division 4. Now, being that everybody almost died and a lot of them tried to kill Denji, Himeno tells Aki that maybe it is a good time for the teams of devil hunters to get together and go out drinking and have a bonding experience because we need to strengthen our team resolve and we need to apologize for trying to kill our friend Denji. And Aki's like, okay, that's a good idea, but I also need to invite that weirdo Makima. So Himeno, Aki, Denji, Power, Kobeni, they all go out to the bar. Kobeni wears this really cute outfit. Power tells everybody not to eat her fucking fried chicken. And Denji tells Himeno that it is time that she delivers that kiss she promised him. And Himeno is like, well, I'm too shy to kiss now, but let me get a couple of beers in me, then we'll totally make out. So then Makima shows up, and because Makima is a full-blown alcoholic, she challenges everybody to a drinking contest. So fast forward a couple of hours, and everybody is fucking smashed. My girl Himeno is fucking sloppy drunk. Like, she is like, somebody take that chick's keys away from her and don't give her any more to drink. And like any sloppy drunk girl, Himeno decides this is a great time for Denji and I to start making out. So Himeno starts making out with Denji, and Denji's like, oh my god, this is awesome, but oh wait, Makima's looking at me. This is kind of fucking awkward, but hey, it's pretty cool to kiss this chick. And then things get really fucked up when Himeno starts puking in Denji's mouth. And because Denji is a motherfucker who is constantly hungry, he swallows Himeno's puke. I mean, this is really fucked up. I feel really bad for Denji. Nobody deserves a fate like this. So Denji freaks out and he starts puking, and everybody decides it is a good time to go home. So Himeno takes Denji home and she throws Denji in her bed, and then she fucking strips off all of her clothes, and then she grabs a beer, starts chugging more beer, and then my girl goes in the fucking bedroom and Himeno gives Denji a beer kiss to make up for the puke kiss she gave him earlier. And she also tells Denji, hey, why don't we have sex? And Denji, as usual, is still freaked out, and he's like, well, sure. And then Himeno starts to take off Denji's clothes and then she passes out. And Denji's like, well, that's cool. I'm saving myself for Makima anyway. So the next day, Denji, Aki, Power, and Himeno are hanging out in the ramen shop. Suddenly this dude at the table next to them starts shit talking the fucking food at this place. And then he tells Denji, hey, remember that old Yakuza dude you killed? He was my uncle and he was an awesome dude and I'm gonna fucking kill you now. Suddenly this dude whips out a gun and he shoots Denji in the head. He shoots at Aki and Himeno. Power jumps in and gives this evil dude a Mortal Kombat uppercut. Aki calls Khan and everything seems to be okay. But then this motherfucker turns into the fucking Katana Man and he starts fucking beating the shit out of Aki. And Aki throws the fucking curse devil at him and Katana Man keeps getting the fuck up. Elsewhere, Makima is ambushed by a bunch of dudes and appears to be fatally shot. Now, I mentioned in my last video, Chainsaw Man's fight with the Eternity Devil bears a lot of parallels to Devilman's fight with Gene-Men. And Gene-Men's greatest strength was doubt. Gene-Men made Devilman believe that killing him would do more harm to the faces than if he let them live. And we see the same idea with the Eternity Devil, where the Eternity Devil goads Denji into attacking him, telling him that Denji can cut up the Eternity Devil as much as he wants, but Denji will never find his heart. But as Denji discovered, if he just kept consistently attacking the Eternity Devil, eventually the Eternity Devil will just give Denji his heart to make the suffering stop. If the Eternity Devil's greatest weapon was doubt, then the way to combat him would be to overcome that doubt and to be persistent. And as we see in this episode, persistence was the way Chainsaw Man was ultimately able to kill the Eternity Devil. We can kind of take Chainsaw Man's fight with the Eternity Devil to be this metaphor for the way you overcome your doubt is by just keep pushing back against it until it no longer can affect you anymore. Devilman's fight with Gene-Men also represented a turning point for the Devilman story. After Devilman's fight with Gene-Men, the entire world goes to hell and everybody gets fucked. And once again, we see this parallel with Chainsaw Man and the Eternity Devil. I think Chainsaw Man's fight with the Eternity Devil represents a very clear turning point in the series, where everything before this point was kind of almost like lighthearted action-adventure stuff. But going forward, the stakes are getting raised and things are going to get a lot more serious. And we've seen this already with the deaths that happened in this episode. Now, I think a lot of people want to blame Himeno for puking all over Denji. After all, it did seem like she partied a little too much and she got a little too drunk, and maybe she should have kissed Denji a little bit earlier. But you want to know what? I think Himeno deserves a pass, because the reason Himeno got so drunk is because she was trying to outdrink Makima, the raging alcoholic. If Makima did not challenge everybody to outdrink her, Himeno would have never gotten that drunk. And if Himeno never got that drunk, she would have never puked all over Denji. I really think the person to blame for ruining Denji's first kiss is Makima. And hey, you want to know what? Just speaking for myself, I will always take a beer kiss over sucking on somebody's used lollipop. Now, I do find Denji's interaction with Himeno back in her apartment to be pretty interesting, because after Himeno passes out, Denji tells himself that, well, you know, I didn't want to have sex with Himeno anyway because I really want to have sex with Makima. But as we've seen in these past episodes, Denji is fucking scared of everything. And when he touched Power's boobs for the first time, he was disappointed. So there is a part of me that can't help but wonder, maybe the reason Denji is telling himself he wants to have sex with Makima is because he's just trying to avoid having sex with Himeno. I realize I'm kind of psychoanalyzing Denji again, but I'm starting to wonder if his fear of success is stopping him from having sex because he doesn't want to be disappointed by it. Himeno passing out before the two of them could have sex will allow Denji to keep fixating on sex and treating it as something that's going to magically fix his problems. Obviously, the thing I think most people are going to think about when they think about Chainsaw Man Episode 8 is the first appearance of Katana Man. And Katana Man does not disappoint. He is just as lethal as Chainsaw Man, and he really beats the shit out of Aki. Just in his first appearance, we could see Katana Man is much more methodical and strategic than Chainsaw Man. We see him first attack Division 4 with a gun, then use his Katana Man form as a way of finishing them off as kind of like a demonic double tap. And even though Katana Man is the star of this fight, I think Aki really does have a lot of moments to shine here. It's awesome that he's able to go the distance with Katana Man, even though he basically used like every fucking super move he had. I think Aki's sword fight with Katana Man when he's using the Cursed Devil and the Cursed Devil is counting down, it's so creepy and weird, and it adds a lot of texture to that fight. And I love when the Cursed Devil just captures Katana Man and he's like slowly pulling him back and Katana Man is crucified. Like, that is an awesome shot. In addition to the first appearance of Katana Man, the other notable thing to happen in Chainsaw Man Episode 8 is Himeno sacrificing herself to save Aki. Over the course of the past couple of episodes, we've seen flashbacks that have given us further details about the relationship between Himeno and Aki. And we start to discover that Himeno is in love with Aki. And when Katana Man is beating the shit out of Aki and it looks like Katana Man is going to kill him, Himeno gives all of herself to the Ghost Devil in order for the Ghost Devil to kill Katana Man. I think Himeno's death has to be the most dramatically powerful scene we've seen in this series so far, and I think it's even more powerful the fact that it is a bloodless death. And it's a much more realistic representation of what death feels like. 1 minute somebody you love is there, and then the next minute they're gone. I think the music in this scene works really well, and watching Himeno just slowly fade away was very powerful and really gave you a sense of how much she cared about Aki. Himeno's greatest fear was losing another partner, and she literally gives everything she has to prevent another partner from dying. As we've seen with the flashbacks, Aki modeled a lot of his personality off of Himeno, like his love of smoking, and I also mentioned before that Aki is kind of going down the same road with Himeno. So, with that said, I think we have to kind of say that things are not looking too good for our buddy Aki here. Now, in the last episode of Chainsaw Man, Katana Man was beating the shit out of Aki, and Aki very well could have died if Himeno did not sacrifice herself in order to save him. Now, the Ghost Devil gets pretty close to killing Katana Man, but then this chick, Akane Sawatari, shows up, and she uses the Snake Devil to kill the Ghost Devil. And Akane tells Katana Man, make sure you don't damage the heart of Chainsaw Man. I'm guessing Chainsaw Man's heart is kind of like the Guyver's control medal, like it's pretty important. But before Katana Man can take Chainsaw Man's heart, the hand of the Ghost Devil pulls the cord on Denji's chest, resurrecting him in his Chainsaw Man form. And Chainsaw Man and Katana Man face off. And I'm really surprised that Denji is able to hold his own over the much more experienced Katana Man. The only error Denji makes is thinking that Katana Man gives a shit about his henchmen. Katana Man's like, I don't give a shit, and then he fucking chops the both of them in half. So Katana Man, Akane, and the rest of their henchmen drag Chainsaw Man's torso away. Now on the other side of Tokyo, Makima appears to have been gunned down by the other members of Katana Man's team. And just as they were about to celebrate a job well done, it turned out Makima is alive. So Makima gets to the station, and waiting for her are Kurose and Tendo, members of Division 1. And Makima tells Tendo and Kurose there was an attack and everybody was killed except for her. Now the way it looked to me before, I'm pretty sure Makima was fucking dead, but I guess the bullets just like grazed her head or something. So Makima tells Kurose and Tendo, I need you to get me 30 convicts and we need to go to the highest point of Tokyo. So once they get there, the members of Division 1 and the convicts have to put blindfolds on because Makima is going to use her devil contract and it is top secret. Nobody can know what it is. And I know this is a nitpick, but this is like literally the most generic looking van of convicts I have ever seen. Like it looks like they just drew different versions of the same dude. So Makima uses her weird fucking devil contract to crush the remaining members of Katana Man's crew. She just compacts them into human jelly. It's also very convenient that Makima seems to know all the names of Katana Man's henchmen. So needless to say, Akane and Katana Man are freaked out that all the members of their fucking crew are now just streaks on the sidewalk. And before they have the chance to complete what's left of their mission, Kobeni shows up and Akane tries to attack Kobeni with the Snake Devil, Devil, and Kobeni starts doing fucking Matrix moves. She fucking does flips, she's running down the back of the Snake Devil, then she cuts off Katana Man's arm and does this really cool John Woo like gun grab and fucking shoots Katana Man without even turning her head. It turns out underneath Kobeni's Principal McVicker exterior is a real badass. So Kobeni uses Chainsaw Man as a human shield, and Akane and Katana Man get in their soccer mom van and they flee in order to live to fight another day. So after executing her weird crushing ritual, Makima and the two members of Division 1 run into Madoka, who informs Makima most subdivisions 1 through 4 have been wiped out, and because there are so few members left, all the divisions are going to be combined and Makima will be the new head of all the divisions. And then Madoka's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here because this shit's getting fucking crazy. Now, in the past couple of episodes, the series has been reinforcing this idea that the thing the devils are afraid of the most is crazy people. And the reason Denji makes a good devil hunter is because he's fucking nuts. We first heard Himeno express this idea to Aki, and then we learned Himeno got this idea from her master, Kishibe. And I think this is a really interesting idea because, as we've mentioned before, devils feed off of fear. The more scared you are, the more powerful the devils become. And one of the most common fears is fear of the dark. I feel like fear of the dark really gets to the core of what fear is. And what fear of the dark is basically fear of the unknown, not being in control. When you're in a dark room, you can't see what's around you, you have no idea what's in there, and you can't prepare yourself for what might happen. So fundamentally, fear of the dark is fear of not being in control. And I really do feel like that is at the core of every fear. Every fear is about not being in control. And so going back to the idea that the devils feed off of fear, if devils are feeding off of your fear and controlling you through your fear, then a crazy person is going to be the one fucking person they won't be able to control. Crazy people aren't afraid of anything. They don't give a fuck. And we see this idea play out with Kobeni. Kobeni is a real fucking badass. She looks like she might even be a better fighter than Aki. But because she can't manage her anxiety levels, she just completely breaks down and becomes immobile. Kobeni shares a lot of parallels with Denji. They both self-sabotage themselves. They're both capable of doing more than they think they can. They both let their fear control them, and they are both at their strongest when they completely lose control. And they both seem to be at that tipping point between sanity and insanity, and that is why, like Chainsaw Man, I think Kobeni, despite her tendency to melt down, has a lot of potential to be a devil hunter. I think we also have to point out Arai's heroic sacrifice in saving Kobeni, and by sacrificing himself, Arai basically served as the spark for Kobeni to unleash her inner Neo. This episode also gives us a little bit more insight into Makima's abilities. Makima evidently has some kind of devil contract that allows her to flatten people like cockroaches, and she could only do it from a really, really high point. So I guess this is the boot devil. I have no idea what contract she is using, but clearly we could see why she has such a high position in the public safety devil hunters, because she is somebody you do not want to fuck with. Maybe Makima even has a contract with the Wolverine devil, and that's how she was able to heal herself after she was shot. Although it is pretty interesting, Makima was very clearly hit, but told the members of Division 1 that she wasn't. And I think it's increasingly clear at this point, this kind of nice passive girl that Makima portrays is actually kind of hiding somebody who's actually pretty determined and pretty aggressive. Now, I'm kind of mixed on the fight between Chainsaw Man and Katana Man. I still think the fight with the Bat Devil is the best fight in this series so far. Chainsaw Man's fight with Katana Man is a little bit more subdued. It's not really like an all-out splatterfest. It's more of like an old-fashioned samurai sword fight with just these two equally powered guys facing off. I could see some people being disappointed because when you hear Chainsaw Man and Katana Man are gonna face off for the first time, you're expecting a fucking huge epic battle. But this episode is kind of like when Kane interrupted Hell in the Cell and just fucking tombstoned The Undertaker. The first meetup is not supposed to be an all-out war. It is setting up the big battle that will come. The Chainsaw Man Katana Man standoff did have some awesome music. It was very metal and it totally fit the attitude of these two characters. characters. And I like this Spider-Man shot of fucking Chainsaw Man jumping at Katana Man. Now, I know some people might be disappointed with the best character in the series, Power, because when the shit hit the fan, Power got the fuck out of there. But what you don't understand is Power did not run away because she's afraid. Power ran away because she was trying to help others. She knew Makima had the situation under control, so Power was surveying the neighborhood to see if anybody else needed help. Power truly is the most caring person in the show. I like the ending sequence, Deep Down by Aimer. The song has a very cool groove to it, and I love the psychedelic animation, and it reminded me a lot of Belladonna of Sadness. So despite having two big events, the face-off between Katana Man and Chainsaw Man, and the first exhibition of Makima's power, I feel like this episode wasn't as strong as previous episodes. This episode serves more to set up the final arc of the season. I guess a better way to put it is that this episode felt more like the beginning of the end.
誰も知らないアクションゲーム、誰も知らないスリル。戦わない、隠れる、見つからないようにする、見つけた、あ、スリル。名前はメタルギアソリッド。スリル。
Konami.
ファイナルファンタジー7始動。
プレイステーション
Old demons, new nightmares, shocking answers, and troubling new questions. MTV presents the season finale of The Max, a special hour-long Max Fest that will have you crying out with sheer wonder at the animated series that questions the meaning of life, the finality of death, and what's really the best way to reattach your head. MTV's Oddities presents The Max 1-hour season finale tomorrow night at 10. Don't forget your magic clay.
Now, where we last left our band of merry misfits, Denji and the rest of Division 4 were attacked by Katana Man, and unfortunately Himeno was killed. The next episode of Chainsaw Man picks up with Aki recovering in his hospital room, and Power and Denji are there, they're reading manga, they're eating all his get-well-soon apples, and Denji's like, "What's going on, Aki? Glad to see you're doing better. Me and Power gotta leave because Makima's gonna have us do some extra training." Then, Kurose and Tendo show up, and they tell Aki he's pretty much used up all of his devil contracts. Khan will not respond to any of his calls because she's kind of pissed off that Aki tried to make her eat Katana Man, and Aki only has 2 years of his life left to give to the Cursed Devil. So Kurose and Tendo are like, "Aki, Makima sent us down here to let you know, since you can't really use your devil contracts anymore, you're not really a lot of use as a devil hunter. So you could either leave or you gotta get more devil contracts. The choice is up to you." And then when the members of Division 1 leave, a mysterious chick walks in and Aki seems kind of surprised. So Makima takes Denji and Power to train with Master Kishibe. And Master Kishibe is like the greatest devil hunter. He kind of reminds me of Kakihara from Ichi the Killer. Not the manga version, but the movie version. He looks fucking exactly like the movie version of Kakihara. But whereas Kakihara was like the ultimate masochist, Kishibe is like the ultimate sadist. He is also a man who enjoys booze and women. How can you not like this dude? He tells Denji and Power they are the perfect candidates to be the the best devil hunters ever because they're fucking nuts. And because Kishibe is a fucking badass who could kill any devil, Kishibe is going to teach Denji and Power how to beat him, thus making them badasses in the process. This is a fucking awesome plan. It is foolproof. Now, it turns out the mysterious girl that came to visit Aki was Himeno's younger sister. And Himeno's younger sister gave Aki a bunch of letters that Himeno had written. And while reading the letters, Aki learns Himeno was struggling financially, she was worrying about her dad, and she was trying to get Aki to leave the public safety devil hunters because she knew continuing to serve as a devil hunter was going to lead to a bad end for them both. But rather than quit the devil hunters, Aki decides to stay the course because he is determined to kill the gun devil. That is his purpose. So the members of Division 1 take Aki to the prison where they keep all the devils so Aki can make a new devil contract. And Aki ends up making a contract with this weird future devil dude. And the future devil tells Aki, if you let me live in your eye, I'll let you use my powers because you have a really fucked up future and you're gonna die in a really fucked up way and I gotta see this shit for myself. And Aki's like, all right, that sounds good to me. Now back with Kishibe, Power and Denji are doing their fucking Master Roshi training and Master Kishibe is fucking beating the shit out of them. Denji and Power die so many times they lose count. Denji starts having some weird head spasm and then Power has to start punching him in the face to make him feel better. Needless to say, things are not looking too good for Denji and Power. But Power tells Denji, okay, Kishibe may be like the smartest devil hunter, but this motherfucker has been drinking booze for years and his brain has been fucking rotted by alcohol. Even though we're pretty fucking stupid, if we put our heads together, we gotta be smarter than that motherfucker. And Denji's like, yes, this is an awesome plan. Let's do it. And you know Denji and Power have gotten smarter because they have put on glasses. And so I am fully confident in this plan they are about to pull off. So Kishibe walks down the hall of this apartment complex and Power is behind the door. And then she shoots one of her blood spears at him, almost getting him. And then Power has a bunch of soda bottles filled with blood that she then fucking brings down like spikes from the combat tomb in fucking Mortal Kombat 2. And then Denji jumps down and he is about to finish Kishibe, but Kishibe gives him a fucking Chuck Norris roundhouse kick and neutralizes Denji. And Kishibe's like, you wanna know what? Good effort. I'm gonna go get drunk. We'll continue this tomorrow. And Denji's like, okay, that's great. And then when Denji says that, Kishibe delivers the finishing blow, letting Denji know, never believe anything your enemy tells you. Or as Kishibe put it, beasts should never trust anything the hunter says. So Kishibe tells Denji and Power they have made some progress, but they still have a lot of training to do, and they will have their first real test the next day because the public safety devil hunters have located Akane and Katana Man. And the public safety devil hunters are getting ready to move in and capture the two bad guys. Now, the night before the raid on Akane and Katana Man, Kishibe and Makima are hanging out, and we come to find underneath his tough Kakihara-esque exterior, Kishibe is actually a pretty good dude. He mourned the death of every devil hunter he trained, and he thought he wouldn't give a shit about Denji and Power because they are crazy devil people, but he does. And this is why he drinks. And we also find out Kishibe doesn't really trust Makima. Kishibe does kind of give the impression that he tolerates Makima just because at the moment she's a benefit to humanity. But there does seem like there's a part of him that feels like Makima might be more concerned with her own ambitions. So now the next day, Denji, Power, Kishibe, Aki, they show up at the building and they're going to raid the hideout of Katana Man, and Denji, Power, and Aki move in. And at that moment, Kishibe gives the rest of the team a briefing on the new members of Division 4. Because in addition to the Three Musketeers, we have some new faces that will be helping out, like the Shark Fiend, who has the power to swim through walls and turn into a fucking land shark. And then there's the Violence Fiend, who is super strong, and the public safety devil hunters actually make him wear a mask with poison in it. There's also the Angel Devil, who you need to be careful because if you get too close to him, he could drain your life with just a touch. And then there's the Spider Devil, who's fucking creepy as hell. Elsewhere, Makima is meeting with the Yakuza, and she is informing them Akane Sawatari is recruiting members of the Yakuza and having them enter in a contract with the Gun Devil. Basically, what's happening is, in exchange for a couple of thousand yen, the Gun Devil will provide each member of the Yakuza with a pair of guns. And Makima tells the Yakuza she needs them to give them the name of all of their members that have contracts with the Gun Devil. And the head Yakuza dude is like, well, that's perfectly fine with me because we think the Gun Devil fucking sucks. And then Makima's like, I'm also going to need the names of all the other syndicates and all the other families that have contracts with the Gun Devil. And that Yakuza dude is like, I can't do that. That's kind of crazy, lady. And Makima's like, well, see, see this fucking brown paper bag? Within the bag contains the eyes of all of your family members. Now, I know somebody who could put these eyes back in their heads, but if you don't cooperate with me, that's probably not gonna happen. Needless to say, the Yakuza dudes are a bit taken aback, and Makima has to flex a little bit of her muscle to get them to back off, but eventually they acquiesce. Scenes like this, with Makima hanging out with the Yakuza, and she's got a bag full of eyeballs, it just once again makes me think Tatsuki Fujimoto is a big fan of the Ichi the Killer movie, or at the very least, a big fan of Takashi Miike, because this scene could have been ripped right out of a Takashi Miike movie. Now, after Katana Man's uncle died, Katana Man inherited an army of zombies, so the public safety devil hunters are down there fucking duking it out with these zombies. Aki and the Angel Devil seem to be hitting it off, and so at this point, everybody splits up and everybody's gonna go settle their scores. Power and Denji go in the elevator, and when the doors open up, they encounter a bunch of zombies, and Denji wanted to avoid these zombies, but Power does the right thing in fucking beating the shit out of these fucking evil zombies. I don't care what anybody says, the world is a better place with less zombies. Ignoring the problem doesn't help. Power knows the solution is you need to kill every single one of these evil pieces of shit. Here is yet another example of Power demonstrating how she is the real hero of this series. There is also nothing wrong with eating a zombie arm if you're hungry. All of us have done it. Everybody, I'm sure, when they were hungry, late at night, decided to raid the fridge and they grabbed a zombie arm out of the fridge. Okay, maybe it wasn't a zombie arm, maybe it was a chicken leg, but it's basically the same fucking thing. Aki then faces off against Akane, and Akane has the snake devil puke up the remains of the ghost devil, and Aki has to have a showdown with the devil of his late friend. Now, at first it seems like the ghost devil will have an upper hand over Aki, but Aki remembered that Himeno told him that the ghost devil can only see fear. So if you are not afraid, the ghost devil can't do anything to you. So Aki approaches the ghost devil with zero fear, and then he cuts the head off the ghost devil. And Kobeni, the secret badass, sneaks up behind Akane, and Denji gets off of the elevator and faces off with Katana Man yet again. And I think this fight is pretty cool. It's very modern superhero. You have Katana Man rushing Chainsaw Man and knocking him into the distance, kind of like Man of Steel. You got the Spider-Man 2 Wolverine train sequence. And as we've seen before, Katana Man is very methodical with his strikes, and he is very aggressive. Katana Man's entire fight style seems to consist of him being on the offensive. And it seems to be working pretty well at first, but it ends up being his downfall. Because once Katana Man has Denji dead to rights, where he cut off both of his arms and he's like that fucking dude in Monty Python, Denji's like, well, I still got the chainsaw in my head, and Katana Man's like, well, fuck that. I'm gonna cut that thing off too. And then Katana Man goes to do a fucking Mega Man dash at Chainsaw Man, and then Chainsaw Man reveals that he had a chainsaw in his foot and he just cut fucking Katana Man in half. It's a shame Katana Man never learned the lesson a beast should never trust anything a hunter says. So once Katana Man is in custody, Aki and Denji have a bit of a bonding moment, and Denji tells Aki we should totally kick the shit out of this dude's nuts as a tribute to Himeno, and Aki's like, well, that seems kind of fucked up and I don't think Himeno would want that, but what the hell, let's do it. And they start kicking the shit out of Katana Man's nuts as a way to honor their late friend, the great Himeno. Now, elsewhere, Makima informs the higher-ups the Snake Devil has killed Akane, essentially committing suicide so she wouldn't be captured. But even though they can't get any information out of Akane, Makima informs the higher-ups they do have a large chunk of flesh of the Gun Devil, and when they combine that chunk of flesh with the other chunks they got, it started to move towards the main body of the Gun Devil, so they basically know where his location is. And that means we are getting closer to a face-off between Chainsaw Man and the Gun Devil. Now that we've seen this entire first season of Chainsaw Man, I think the ideas and subtext can be seen now with a lot more clarity. These early chapters of Chainsaw Man to me really feel like a satire of post-college life. The life Denji is currently living reminds me a lot of what my life was like when I was in my early 20s, when I just got out of school and I was forced to take a shitty job just to pay off my student loans. I feel like this is one of the ideas that Chainsaw Man is commenting on. This idea that debt is a necessary part of life and is also something that's kind of responsible for your downfall. When Denji's a little kid, he inherits his father's debts and is forced to work for the Yakuza, and then when he becomes Chainsaw Man, he is forced to work for Division 4 under threat of losing his life. It's almost as if being Chainsaw Man comes with a price. As we see with Aki, he is forced into another contract with another devil, essentially taking on more debt. Aki's devil contracts are basically stripping away whatever life he has left. I also think the scene of Makima confronting the Yakuza is very interesting, especially when Makima says the Yakuza is not a necessary evil because necessary evils are essentially controlled by the government. And when you take that idea in combination with the allegory about debt, it seems to me that Chainsaw Man is commenting on this idea nations are essentially manufacturing misery for their citizens. And going back to the whole allegory of Chainsaw Man being about post-college life, when people graduate school, they come out loaded with debt, and the reason they are is because society is doing that as a way to control you and restrict your mobility in life. We can't have you graduate college and make too much money because then you might not show up to that shitty job anymore. So we have to make sure there's a certain amount of economic pressure on you the whole time. And we see this idea of control throughout the series, especially with Denji, who's not only controlled by his debts, but he's also controlled by things like boobs and wanting to get laid. I think Makima's statement that necessary evils are controlled by the government is a little inaccurate. I think a more accurate statement would be necessary evils are controlled by people in power. And so in a society, the people in the government have the power. And in Division 4, Makima has the power. Makima is manufacturing the misery in Division 4. She made Aki get another devil contract, and like I said, if it wasn't for her raging alcoholism, Himeno wouldn't have gotten drunk and puked all over Denji. I've also mentioned in past videos how the idea of fear is a recurring idea. And once again, we see this idea appear in the story. The way Aki is able to defeat the Ghost Devil is to have no fear. The story is essentially telling us the things that you're afraid of and the things that you feel like control you only have power if you give them that power. If you play into the fear, it makes the things that you're afraid of much more stronger. Essentially, the limitations we have in life, the challenges we face in life are all self-imposed. We could all rise above these things if we choose. And that is an idea we see represented in the character of Chainsaw Man himself. Chainsaw Man is Denji when Denji is free from all of the restrictions of everyday life. Chainsaw Man gives Denji the power to do anything that he wants. But even as Chainsaw Man, Denji allows himself to be controlled. And sure, Makima may have made Aki strike a deal with the future devil, but at the end of the day, it was his choice. So Chainsaw Man is not only commenting on this idea that society manufactures things to control people, like debts and the promise of being able to grab a boob, it's also commenting on the idea that we are participants in this because we are allowing ourselves to be controlled. Aki believes he has no other purpose other than to fight the gun devil. Denji thinks he needs all this materialistic shit to make himself happy. It's almost as if the story is trying to say we allow ourselves to be controlled in order to keep the things that we want or in order to give ourselves purpose. Now, overall, I was really satisfied with the first season of Chainsaw Man. It lived up to all of my expectations and I really enjoyed it. I can see that some people might take issue with the pacing of the series because I actually thought the series would end with the confrontation with Bomb Girl. And looking back, it does feel as if there was a lot of padding in some episodes. But with that said, I think the pacing in Chainsaw Man works really well. I feel like some of the extra scenes that they added really give the story a lot more room to breathe. I like seeing the extra scenes of Aki hanging out in his apartment. I love seeing the extra scenes of just Power, Denji, and Aki just tooling around Tokyo. And I like all the extra stuff we saw at Himeno's apartment, where we see Himeno like drunkenly get more beer, and we get that POV shot of Himeno trying to seduce Denji in the bedroom. I think all that stuff was great, and it did a really good job of humanizing Himeno. I think even more so than in the manga. And I also think Aki's confrontation with the Ghost Devil works really well too. You see some extra shots in the anime that they don't have in the manga. I think the music in this scene works really well. And what I really love is the flashback Aki has when he remembers that virtual date he had with Himeno. What I love about this scene is that it really looks like one of those Bishoujo dating simulator games. It's hysterical. It makes me think that Aki just sees the world as a Bishoujo dating simulation. Now, this scene in the manga is kind of presented as a grid, and the grid layout really does give this scene a quicker pace in the manga. And in the anime, I really like the fact that there are all these little spaces where Himeno will say a line and she'll kind of pause and make an expression with her face, and then Aki will respond, and then we'll see Himeno react with another expression. The anime version of this flashback, I think, had a really great rhythm that I don't think really came across in the manga, and I feel like there are a lot of moments like that in the Chainsaw Man anime. One scene I thought worked better in the manga was when Aki is in the hospital and he's about to light up a cigarette, and suddenly he gets that image of Himeno lighting her lighter. I like that scene better in the manga because in the manga, I kind of interpreted that scene to almost be like that scene in One Piece when Zoro is practicing his sword after Kuina dies, and then suddenly he sees that shot of Kuina sitting there out of the corner of his eye, and then he turns around and she's gone. That was the way I interpreted that scene in the manga with Aki and Himeno. I thought Aki was lighting his cigarette, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw Himeno offering him a light. But in the anime, they just play it as a flashback, and I mean, I guess it still works in the anime, I just liked it better in the manga. Now, this has been said before in the comment section a lot, but I really do think the Denji and Power training sequence really does solidify them as the Beavis and Butthead of anime. Like Beavis and Butthead, Power and Denji are so fucking stupid, they go around to being smart. And even if Beavis and Butthead's plan completely falls on its face, Beavis and Butthead will still manage to come out on top. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening with Denji and Power. And what I also love about the Denji and Power training sequence is the fact that, unlike most anime characters who when they go to training, they get better, Denji and Power don't. If anything, they just get slightly better. And if you only come away from Chainsaw Man learning one thing, learn what Power taught us, which is the way to help your friend when they're hurt is to keep punching them in the face till they feel better. Now, I've mentioned this in past videos, but Denji is the kind of guy who does a lot of self-sabotaging. And I think we see this again when Denji visits Aki in the hospital. When Denji visits Aki in the hospital, he is struck at how indifferent he feels. He feels like he wouldn't really give a shit if Aki died. He probably wouldn't give a shit if Power died. He might be sad for a little while if Makima died, but he'd get over it pretty quickly. And then Denji starts to think like, wow, maybe Pochita didn't just replace my heart, maybe he kind of replaced my soul, and I can't love anymore. But what I think Denji's problem is that he is a dude who is completely cut off from his feelings. Because we know he's a good guy. We saw him do good things. He saved people when he was fighting the Bat Devil. He's a well-meaning dude. But like a lot of young dudes, he is not in touch with his sensitive side. And like, look, this is another one of those things that I could speak from experience. I could remember being a 20-year-old guy who never cried at movies. And then one day I got old and I started to cry at movies all the fucking time. Because when I was a young guy, I think I was too afraid to admit my feelings to myself. And I think that's what's going on with Denji. Denji may say he doesn't care about Power, but looking at his actions, I have to disagree. So like I mentioned before, I really enjoyed the first season of the Chainsaw Man anime. As somebody who read the manga, the anime was pretty much everything I expected it to be. Although I am open to other opinions. If you have problems with the anime, if you have criticisms, leave me a comment because I'd love to hear them. Now, at the time that I'm recording this, the second season of Chainsaw Man has not been officially announced, but it seems like it's pretty much a given there'll be a season 2 of Chainsaw Man. This first season of Chainsaw Man ends by teasing Bomb Girl. If you were like me and you thought Katana Man was pretty cool, but he would have been improved like with boobs, then Bomb Girl is the character for you. And if they make a season 2, I am looking forward to seeing more of the new members of Division 4. The Violence Fiend is very cool, and the Shark Fiend is really awesome. The Shark Fiend is also the character that in the manga gave us this iconic shot of Chainsaw Man riding a fucking shark, and that will be cool to see in anime. So there's still plenty of more to talk about in regards to Chainsaw Man. So with that said, this is Reverend Paul saying, until we meet again.